If you're managing HubSpot workflows at any kind of scale, you've probably hit this exact moment. You need to make a change, whether it's turning off a workflow, renaming a property, or cleaning up a workflow that's been sitting idle for the last 2 years. But then you realize you don't actually know what else that change is going to touch. Questions like which workflows are connected to this one, what's going to fire downstream, and is there anything else in the portal depending on this logic? HubSpot shows you workflows one at a time, but it doesn't show you the full system. So today I'm going to show you 3 ways to get that visibility. We'll start with what HubSpot gives you natively, then look at how teams use Lucidchart and Miro to fill these gaps, and lastly I'll show you what that looks like in Howley, which is the tool built specifically for this. Let's get into it. All right, so we are back in HubSpot and we are of course dealing with our automations today, specifically our workflows. One thing HubSpot does really well is of course allow you to create these great intricate workflows that are interconnected with properties and lists and enrollments into other workflows. But one thing that HubSpot perhaps doesn't do so well is show you how everything is connected. Now, one thing that teams will do is when you want to audit or you want to look at your list of workflows, you can actually click into each individual one and you can see the connections view as they are associated with properties or emails or forms or other workflows, etc. So in this example, I have a basic workflow. It is a set as MQL. So once a score is greater than 50, we want to make sure that the lifecycle stage is set to marketing qualified lead. And if I go under the connections view here, we get that side panel and we can see that under the properties, there's a few things that this workflow relies on. So number one is the behavior score through the trigger. We also have the lifecycle stage because we want to edit the record. And then we also create a task and assign that to the contact owner. And while this flow is easy and manageable, how would we know that there might be other workflows that are also relying on the set lifecycle stage to marketing qualified lead? So for example, right, you may have a workflow that is when somebody becomes a marketing qualified lead, they enroll in a nurture program, and then they're subsequently perhaps meeting a score, and then they're being enrolled as a sales qualified lead. But there could be sometimes or some examples of new nurture programs being set up where they're both writing to the same property, such as marketing qualified lead, or there could be times where a deal stage sets the contacts to sales qualified lead before they've even reached their score threshold. So, I mean, what do you do as a consultant or as an admin or a RevOps professional in general, right? One thing that I have done throughout my time consulting is I have found Lucidchart to be a great use case for mapping out all of my workflows and mapping out how they're all connected. So in this example, I've tried to go through some of these workflows that I have in my portal and I've tried to map them out, right? So we can see how when somebody becomes new lead, they are enrolled into a welcome nurture and then perhaps a re-engagement flow and then a special offer. But one thing I did find was that there are other workflows that are also enrolling into this main sent special offer. And so one thing is making sure that your process documentation is completely up to date so you know exactly what happens if you want to go ahead and create a new workflow or build something new or review. But the other thing is, well, what happens when you've actually built this documentation? Is it being reviewed by your teams? Does it get pushed up to C-level? I mean, who is responsible for this? And worst of all, as soon as this is created, it is only a static snapshot in time. And it doesn't, I mean, you still need to go ahead and manually update to make changes so on and so forth. Another great tool for process documentation, one I found is Miro, right? So, I mean, there's templates around it, and you can drag in a sticky note and you can make notes about what these various workflows do. And I have found that Miro is also a great visualization tool, especially when it comes to mapping out your, I mean, I don't even know how many workflows, 63 workflows I have here. This is a lighter portal. And so these are some of the free tools available that can certainly help guide you in the right direction as you're working through and auditing all of your workflows and making sure that everything is up to date. But the last tool that I want to show you is actually Howley. And Howley is the sort of more purpose-built tool for process documentation across HubSpot workflows specifically. If I go into Howley, we can actually see that rather than showing your HubSpot workflows in a list view, what Howley does is show you all of your workflows as nodes on this canvas. And what's really cool is that it's actually broken into the workflow property type. So you have your contact workflows, your deal workflows, you have your company workflows, tickets, leads, custom, etc. But then rather than necessarily mapping out each individual workflow, we can see right off the bat which workflows are active and which workflows are inactive. And that is because the inactive ones here are opaque and the active ones here are fully visible. What's really cool about Howley too is that there are some quick symbols up here. So green will symbolize that it's active, but then the purple dot here will actually note that this has connections to other workflows. And so what happens if I click in on this right now? Well, we can see immediately that there is a connection line drawn from this workflow to another. And if I click on this again, it opens the sidebar and it shows me the enrollment, it shows me the actions, and then it also shows me the connections that this is started by or what it starts. So in this case, we can see that this particular workflow is started by this workflow called customer lifecycle or lifecycle stage customer welcome flow. And again, let's see here. So we can see that it's added to the list called active customers, and that is what starts this workflow right here, because we can see the enrollment is when they are in a list called active customers. We want to wait for a day and send the email campaign, etc. What's cool too as you're working through this is you can actually go directly in the sidebar and click, well, what happens if I turn this off? So we can see that contacts added to the active customers list by this workflow called lifecycle stage customer welcome will no longer enter this workflow. And what I can do is, rather than clicking through each individual workflow, I can actually drag and drop these nodes onto the canvas to create my own process map that will be saved in real time as I'm working through this. So I'm going to go through a few more here and see what has connections. So we can see that this one has a connection added to list called high engagement. So this is cool. So there is a workflow that says that email clicks equal high intent. So it adds contacts who click on marketing email links to a high engagement contact list. And so when they are added to this list, it starts this workflow here, which is when they are a high engagement contact and their behavior score is greater than 50, that is when that workflow triggers. Now, one thing you'll find as you're using Howley for the first time is, while it's very cool that you can click through these workflows and you can start to create your process map on a one-to-one, wouldn't it be nice if you could see all of your connections in one go so you could create your own process map? Well, we actually have the all connections toggle here, which will show you how all of the connections are between the workflows at one time. And this is the aha moment for a lot of people as they're using Howley for the first time, in that it's showing, okay, wow, we have deal workflows that are triggering contact workflows that are triggering other workflows. So if I go here, I can see that there's immediately some overlap between the workflows. and there's some race conditions that shouldn't be happening. So if I can go ahead and actually create that, we can see really quickly that there are a lot of connections that perhaps shouldn't be there. So the green connection lines here, they'll show you what the property is. So we can see that if lifecycle stage is MQL, we trigger this last activity days. Last activity date is 45 days plus MQL, so it sends a final check-in email. So we can see that there's quite a few interesting connections here as I'm starting to map out my my entire process map in real time. And again, I mean, I'm not necessarily doing any manual work here because all of this information is pulled directly from your HubSpot portal. And so what you're seeing in real time is how all of your connections are mapped and how they all fit together. The red lines here will show that the target is off, so that's good. Okay, so we have some active connections, but it goes to an inactive workflow, so it likely doesn't matter, right? Whether or not that's on or off. But one thing that I've done just now is actually create this process map for my entire team as I'm auditing this HubSpot portal. I'm going to move this up here, and then I'll move that here, and then move that there. And yeah, there are quite a few connected lines. And one thing that once I'm completed with creating this process map, I would say visibility is only half of the battle here as I'm going through this, because as a next step, of course, I want to make sure that the overlap is still makes sense from a business perspective. And what I can do is I can click into each individual workflow, click directly on the HubSpot link, and it takes me to that workflow in my portal, which is cool. So once I've mapped out my workflows here, I've put all the nodes where I want them. As a next step, what I might want to do is look at the overall health score of my portal. And I do that by using the workflow health check feature that Howley has here, which actually tells me where there are duplicate actions, empty workflows, stale workflows, some standalone ones, some inactive ones, and again, there's also some duplication here. So in any given HubSpot portal that you look at, there will be workflows that were created 2-3 years ago, or created by a person who's no longer at the company. Or if you're working with a client, I mean, how do you find heads or tails in a brand new portal as you're running your audits here and your cleanup project? So for example, I can see that there are 3 empty workflows. One is inactive, that's nice. But I can actually click into these ones individually, and I can see exactly what they are, what the triggers are. Again, I guess for empty, there's none. But this is an opportunity to clean up, and I can really quickly go in here to HubSpot, and I can turn this workflow off and delete it. It's safe to be deleted. In a similar vein, right, I can look at duplicate actions. So these are all writing to the same properties, which is not ideal. So for example, right, I have this one is writing to open deal and opportunity, and there are several other workflows that are also writing to that. And so this is another opportunity to clean up and consolidate as you're going through this. And especially, I mean, you don't want 2 workflows writing to the same property, like set lifecycle stage to MQL, or set lifecycle stage to opportunity, something like that. Because the problem with that is it does create race conditions, and it's going to mess up your data. And you, of course, want your process to reflect your clean data in your HubSpot portal. Another really cool thing that Howley can do is, let me just go ahead and actually reset the canvas here. I'll do that here. And once I've reset the canvas, one thing I can do is I can actually use the insights layer on top to get a really nice review of what is working, what's broken, and what to fix first across all of my workflows. And so what Howley has is a built-in Claude integration. And what happens now is we take a snapshot of all of your workflows, we write them into Claude, and then we can see gaps and opportunities and recommendations and next steps and a description as well of the workflows. So once this has been completed, we can see that the description shows that there's 41 active workflows, 22 inactive ones. We can see issues, that there's split lead management systems, duplicate MQL workflow logic. Some gaps is that there's no GDPR automation set up. There's no deal assignment automation. There's some lead scoring that's abandoned here, which is cool that we're seeing this for the first time. There's also heavy reliance on internal notifications. We're getting a lot of those. So those are some opportunities here. Deal stage as well. And then lastly, there's recommendations. And taking all of this into consideration, I can download this and I can, if I wanted to, bring that into Claude myself. And then I have a working file and a working list of what needs to be fixed first. If you're also looking at things like, well, what happens if I want to change things, or what happens if I write to this property? We also have the impact analyzer here, which shows you your most used properties in your workflows. In this instance here, we have lead status and lifecycle stage as the most used. So we can see that lifecycle stage triggers enrollment across 8 workflows, but it modifies lifecycle stage across 15 workflows. So these are all things like sets lifecycle stage to opportunity, sales qualified lead other. Right away, we can see that there is an opportunity to clean this up because we have 2 separate workflows writing to the same property, which is, it could be ideal, but it most likely isn't. So we have it under, I can see that this is a deal stage workflow where there's a contract sent and in negotiation. But unfortunately, this is setting the lifecycle stage to opportunity across 2 workflows. And so this is your opportunity to consolidate across what's working and what isn't. And lastly, if you're planning a workflow, you want to set something up, we now have the planned workflow feature, which allows you to set the type that you're looking at. Let's say contact for the sake of this. And the action that I want is, I want to set the property as lifecycle stage. And this is another use case. Agencies specifically love using this because if they want to create a new workflow on behalf of a client, really quickly we can see, okay, I want to create an MQL workflow. Okay, well, what does that trigger? So it triggers these 2 workflows, and now really quickly I can get a feel for either I need to consolidate these 2 or I need to look into why these are being triggered. If I go ahead, and the last thing I want to show is the reporting aspect. So once you have looked at your entire workflow, you've looked at the map, you've looked at the health check, you looked at the AI insights. Now, as the last thing, what you might want to do is download a report that you can either present upwards or show to your team or a client. And what the report will show you is the overall health score, number of workflows, summary, top priorities, everything that's needed to clean up your workflows today. So we provide portal benchmarks. We provide a list of issues across warnings and info, and we give you the AI insights layer that Claude has provided directly in this report. And then we give you the full inventory of all of the workflows as they're active, inactive. And then lastly, we give you the appendix of the most used properties as actions, as conditions, as triggers, as they are in your portal there. So if I were looking at how to visualize and how to work across my workflows, I would, if I had 5 or 10 workflows or 15, I would be okay with using tools like Lucidchart and Miro to create that process map and present upwards to the team or the client. But if I had more than 50 or 60 or 100 or 300, I would most certainly look at a tool like Howley to close that gap across not only the visibility, but also the insights layer. Because once you get to a certain amount of workflows and a certain amount of debt, it gets to a point where it's overwhelming and you need that visualizer to give you that 30,000 feet view, both granularly across the workflows as you're clicking through them, but also to show all the connections at one time to know, okay, this is what's wrong and this is what I need to do.